All right, we're live. Hello, I'm Christopher Teese, or Topher, as you see on the screen. I'm with my co-host Alex Rockhold, and we are gonna go over some things from the Indiana State game.
Yeah, and we're sorry for a little bit of the delay here. I was on vacation, so I was watching the game while we were driving from Glacier National Park to Banff National Park in Canada. So um, a little late on this. We ideally want to do this the day of, um, but here we are a couple of days later, and it should be the day of or the next day for the rest of them. We hope so.
And a lot of those will be hard for me because living in Greenwood, I'm usually not gonna come home right after the game. I'll probably stay up with my parents on after games, and then I can still do shows from their house. But
Yeah.
all right, so we're going to start with we are both going to share five encouraging things we saw on the offense, five encouraging things we saw from the defense, and then three overall concerns from the whole game. And I don't know, you want to start, Alex, or you have anything to add real quick before we start that?
I mean, just generally, like starting right out the gate, like just kind of general before we hop into offensive and defensive, but like what an impressive statement I feel like from the Boilers in Game One. I think that was everything I was hoping for. 49 points is a big deal, and a shutout is also a big deal. So I'm glad that and yes, it is an FCS opponent, and even for an FCS opponent, Indiana State is not great. But I was impressed that we came out and we were dominant from the very beginning. And I mean, I just couldn't be more impressed with Game One. I know it's weak competition, but you can't overlook the weak competition. And it was nice to just come out and dominate them and just not take our foot off the brake and get the backup some playing time. All those things, all good things. So just
Yes, I guess
before
that
we
was the
hop
only
in,
thing I was going to add was, yeah, it is Indiana State, but it's a lot of new guys being added in with a lot of guys who have been in the system for a year. It's just I I'm impressed with what I saw and happy with what I saw. And the real test will be in 2 weeks versus Notre Dame.
yeah. Just wanted to get that off our chest a little bit because it's been a couple days, but I mean, man, it was impressive. I couldn't have been happier on Saturday. The team showed up, so.
Yes.
Now, diving into it, we'll start out with offense. Obviously, 49 points is an offensive explosion, as I would say. So I'm glad that the offense was firing in all cylinders. And then we'll kind of go through. We both did like 5 points. We might overlap a little bit, but um, my first point, and I mean, maybe it's not the biggest point for everybody, but I was really impressed with Jamal Edrin. He was supposed to be our top wide receiver last year. He got hurt, and in year two, or I guess in this year, healthy game one, we went to him right away twice and got 2 first downs, and I just thought that was really impressive.
Yeah,
But
watching the game on TV after I got home after the game, I feel like I don't remember him getting the ball that much, like watching the game and Rossade, but obviously he did, and it just felt like they went to him a lot, and I just not something I was aware of as much in the game, I guess, at Rossade that I thought I would be.
yeah, and some of that could probably be the fact that it was like the first 2 plays of the game on offense. So like maybe that's stuck in my head right away where it's like
You
went to him
first play,
early,
yeah.
went to him often, 2 first downs. I mean, in total he had 5 targets. So and that is the one downside. The one incompletion for Hudson Card was a deep ball to Jamal Edrin, and it was just long. I
Oh, and
I think it
we
was
the whole stadium thought it was on key, and we were all standing up getting ready to go nuts, and like we all just kind of sunk the second we saw that it wasn't going to happen. We were, oh.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, and I was like, touchdown, and I was so excited, and then it was just long. So Jamal Edwin, yeah, I mean, that's my first point. I just thought he was
I'll
impressive. So
I'll
I
go ahead
figured,
and
yeah,
talk about my first point now too. Is Hudson Card throwing 24 of 25 for 96% completion percentage, which was a record, I believe, for 273 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, 3 rushes for 16 yards, which I'm okay with because it keeps him healthier. But showed his mobility if needed to be. And then I also have for my second point now. Oh, and I also want to add how you were talking about Adrian was originally the number one, who we thought would be number one. Who was it? What's the guy's name? Uh,
Dion Burks,
no, Rigby,
Rigby, yeah,
the guy who was number one. He had 2 catches, and I was impressed with. But I mean, I yeah, I just feel like I don't know that we did go more to our bigger guys and more experienced guys. So I do think he'll get there though.
yeah,
My second point, like I was starting to say, was the 248 rushing yards by the team, 210 by Maccabee and Jackson combined, 89 by Maccabee for 11 runs, and 83 by Jackson on only 3 runs. He was very impressive. I mean, that was late in the game. There were some late in the game. I don't know how much of their. Yeah, I just feel like there was some things that maybe benefited him more being when he got his yards. But I mean, it's still impressive that he played out like he did.
yeah, and yeah. I mean, part of that is that was obviously a huge play. I mean, it's not easy to break, you know, a big run like that, and I think it was like 69 yards. Like that's a big run. That's a full length of, maybe not quite full length of the field, but if you start at the 75 or the 25, which would be 75, like that's almost like a full length of you know full length of the field if they start with a touchback. Like that's a big run. So I mean, he was very fast. That's part of it. Is I think my
Yes,
big thing with him on his big run is
I
that he
mean,
just pulled away from everybody, and
he is only a freshman, so that's some very encouraging facts on top of our encouraging facts. So
yeah. And this kind of similar to Chris on this. My point regarding the running backs is that I was impressed with it, like running back by committee. I knew we were going to do it some. I mean, you have Reggie Love too. I mean, I think he only had 38 yards on 7 runs, but I'm like, that's not. I mean, both Maccabee, I guess all running backs for that matter, their averages are, let's see, 8.1 for Maccabee, 27.7 for Jackson. Obviously, with the big run, that helps. And Love was 5.4 yards. Like those are big run averages. So for all of them, I was impressed by the running back by committee. It starts out with Maccabee and Love, and I thought they both looked good. Um, I believe the interview was as of today. Walter stated that, I mean, he's going to lean on the hot hand throughout the season, and he'll use both Love and Maccabee as our top guy at times this season. Just depends. And I mean, he did mention also that, the Big Ten season's long. People could get, kind of small injuries here and there. We're going to need them all at some point this season, I'm sure. So it's good to see them all in game one.
yes, and
Very
like you said,
productive.
just the whole committee thing with Jackson playing out like he did, big, being so green to the game and fresh coming in as a freshman. So I mean,
Yeah. I guess moving on from there, I mean, the the next thing that kind of stood out to me some Max Clare. I mean, another guy coming off an injury. So I guess two of my points are Max Clare and Jamal Edrin. These are guys who were either out all year last year or had long term injuries. So Max Clear was great on
He,
Saturday. Like, let's
he was.
be completely honest. He was everything we needed him to be and more. I mean, I thought he was great last year too. I think he's going to be the next great Purdue tight end. I mean, the coaching staff just raves about him. Um, this last Saturday, he had 5 receptions for 71 yards and a touchdown. Um, I think the big thing for me with him is that Purdue went to Claire several times when we needed a big play. He seemed to be like our go-to third down guy, things like that. And I
He's,
remember watching the game as well. There's a point where he was being double covered, and it's like even being double covered is a big deal because then you have single coverage on Edrin or somebody could get free when somebody's being double covered like that. So
yeah,
you need
he's
a guy
kind
like
of
that.
the way the tight ends have kind of moved recently instead of being blockers, being more receivers. I mean, he's a big guy, so I still think that he could block, needed to be. But yeah, he made some huge plays and he was running downfield with some speed and that kind of goes with my point to my third encouraging point was I was impressed by the quick passes, like Card hiked the ball, took 2 steps, threw it out wide, and the big wide receivers were blocking well out there. How good that'll do against Big Ten teams, I don't know. But I mean, still, usually the defensive backs aren't known to be huge guys. So I'll take a 6'3", 100 and or what? Edrin's 215, isn't he?
Oh,
I
I don't know off the top
think
of my
he's
head, but
6'3",
he's
215,
he's tall, yeah, long arms.
and then just going against a 5'10", 170 defensive back. I'll take the big guy in that. And yeah, uh, Harrell said in his one post game or his one pregame conference last week that he's he likes the size of the wide receivers and how they're much bigger this year at wide receiver than they were, and they're just, that's what impressed me was the quick passes and using the wideouts as blockers to get going downfield.
Yeah, I think sometimes that's kind of like a lost art from a viewer's perspective. Is that like, I mean, you could really take for granted a blocking wide receiver. Like, yes, they're known for the big play, getting the ball, all those things, but like having those guys like big wide receivers out there who can like take a quick pass play and then provide a good block. I mean, that's what makes winning teams. So definitely a huge deal. Going on,
Well,
no,
go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say going alongside the wide receivers. One of my points from the game is, I mean, I was just impressed with our wide receiver depth. I know one thing that we've talked about going into the season is that our wide receivers are talented but unproven. So I thought this was a great game. Card did a great job, distributing the ball well. And I mean, what stood out to me is 12 different Purdue players had a reception. Some of those are running backs, tight ends, things like that. But the majority of that is a wide receiver. So, um, and I was impressed with what I saw from the backups. Some of the younger guys like having good catches. I mean, the name that sticks out to me immediately is Leland Smith. I mean, he had a couple big grabs, a 31-yard catch and a 16-yard catch, and one was a touchdown.
I say,
So
I thought you had a touchdown.
yeah, it's like, I mean, even those young guys who are not perhaps the starters got some reps and things like that, and I think it was encouraging that those guys were producing in a actual game. So
And that's one thing I saw in an interview, a post game interview. I think that was just posted not long. I think it might have been posted today by Walters, talking about how the second string guys getting the experience helps a lot. And I mean, hopefully, as the year goes on, we can keep getting that experience because that means we're beating teams good. So Then that was your fourth point, right?
Yeah,
Was
that's my fourth.
all right. And my fourth point is the 583 total yards. I mean, obviously, again, like we said, it's ISU. It's not something to get super excited about, but it's still a college football team, and we ran on them fairly easy. We threw on them fairly easy, and it was just overall just an impressive offensive game for a defensive minded head coach and defensive team. That we we are. I think Walters would like to the team to be noticed as more than maybe not Harold, but Walters is the head coach. So
Well, yeah, and I think it's encouraging too because I think in the game against ISU, you saw how certain things helped the other parts of the game as well. You know, you start out right out the gate, you have two quick outs to Jamal Edrin, who breaks a couple free for 2 first downs, and all of a sudden the defense is scrambling, figuring out, oh, like how are we going to stop this? And then all of a sudden you can, the next play, Maccabee breaks a run for another first down. So it's just a big deal. It was very balanced. I think it was 335 yards passing. Yeah, 335 yards passing to 248 rushing. Like that's a good spread, especially nowadays with rushing. Like sometimes takes a back seat. 250 yards rushing is a lot. So it was a balanced attack. I thought that was very good, encouraging. I mean, I hope we see more of that. So
and then my final point is one I kind of just made also when like I said, Walters made in his uh, conference, not conference, was the depth getting playing time, getting experience for everybody, and I, I I know we've said it 5 billion times, but we'll keep saying it too. It's ISU, we know, but experience nonetheless. So
and my final point. This is a repeat, but I think Hudson Card deserves those flowers. I know Chris already mentioned this, but Hudson Card. I mean, 24 for 25. That ties the FBS record with 96% completion over 20 attempts, of course. I mean, that's impressive. That is a big deal. I mean, I know. I mean, I don't think we could speak more highly of Hudson Card game one. His He was on fire. His balls were on target. Wideouts are catching even some of the more difficult balls, things like that. I mean, his only completion was a long ball that he was just long on. I mean, it was dang close too. So I'm like, and then the other thing with him too is I noted this during the preseason, some of the preseason shows, is that he only scrambled 3 times, and I think that's generally good. You know, Walters has mentioned that he will scramble at times. If we need a play, he will go after it, but they kind of want him to maybe only do it as much as he needs to and not really take the extra hits. So I thought that was encouraging. But I mean, Hudson Card, I mean, his balls were, he was zipping them and they were darts and they're on target. I mean, it was just overall just a remarkable game. I don't care who the competition is. I know a lot of the balls were short, things like that. Like 96% completion is impressive.
yeah,
It is obviously a record. That is a huge deal. I mean, he was just a masterclass. He had a great game. So
and I know a lot of fans at the next level in the NFL want that from their quarterbacks is mobility, because like that's one thing I've seen a lot of Raiders people complain about O'Connell is he drops back in the pocket and he just sits there. He can't move. And I felt like in Purdue he did a couple times, but I mean, it's good to see that early from Card that he's willing to keep going. And I mean, who knows against a more experienced, better team like Notre Dame, maybe he'll get some bigger runs and he'll see some different holes and stuff. So
So I mean that kind of wraps us up for the offense. 49 points, big deal. Very balanced attack. Wide receivers were good. Tight ends were good. I mean, yeah, it was. maybe just one blemish with the Drew River fumble, but I mean, it happens sometimes. He took a big. I mean, helmet was right on the ball. Defender did exactly what I needed to do to jar that loose. So frustrating at the time, but you obviously don't want that in bigger games where the stakes are higher, perhaps, or you know, if you do make a mistake like that, it could be punished more quickly, with like a quick score or things like that. But I mean, overall, the offense was dominant start to finish. So
Yeah. And then the one thing, this is the largest crowd in an opening game for Purdue since 2005. And there was 59,488 people there. So with our renovations, the size is a little smaller, I think, than what it was. I thought it was 60,000 before. But I mean, still, that's we there's a handful of Indiana State fans there, probably family and their band, and just people wanting to get out cheap for a game. Because I think I saw some tickets were going for like $6, and so I mean, people were just getting out enjoying the game. And obviously, they're a little more expensive for the Notre Dame game. I've had several people ask me about them, and I told my father, who's a season ticket holder, I was like, he gets a handful of tickets, and I was like, we could honestly probably sell our tickets for a good price. I was like, we wouldn't because we want to be there, but if we could sell our Notre Dame tickets for a good price if we wanted to.
yeah, but
He
we
kind
want
of scolded me for that, but yeah,
we want Purdue fans in seats though.
yes,
But we don't want Purdue fans selling their season tickets to Notre Dame fans.
to IU basketball fans, yeah.
Yeah. So moving on, we'll move on to the defense. I mean, defense obviously a shutout was impressive, and I mean, I, I mean, just a great all around game for the defense, and I think they showed good improvement from last year and things like that. So I mean, I guess we'll jump right into it, and I think the first thing that kind of stuck out for me, and this was kind of maybe one of the questions I had going into the season, I was a little worried about the D line. Um, I was a little worried about depth, and with Scorton leaving and Jenkins moving to linebacker, and I was like, how is our D line gonna like show up game one? And it's kind of more turnover, and then it's just like not as much experienced guys as some of the other positions. I think it was maybe the biggest question mark on the defense, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just want to say that I think the D line was great this game. I mean, particularly Helt and Emba. I mean, they had several tackles for losses and sacks and things like that. But the D line in general, they were everywhere. They were disruptive. They didn't let ISU get into any sort of rhythm. A big impressive stat for me is that ISU's top two backs in the game where they rushed a lot only had 50 total yards. So that's impressive. I mean, they D line stuck out to me big time this game.
Yeah, one of my points was also it was a shutout. Again, it's Indiana State, so don't get too excited. But I mean, it's still a shutout in a college game. A lot of nervous guy. We had a freshman defensive back on the field quite a bit. We don't, yeah, I think most of the starters only played what 2.5 quarters.
Yeah,
I think it was
roughly.
kind of maybe the last 5 minutes of the third quarter is when he started pulling the first stringers, but still, most they didn't play the whole game. I mean, if they would have, it could have been 70-something-0.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were like you said in one point on your points. I won't give it away yet, but the defense did give some stuff up, and they were Indiana State was feet away from a field goal. It was just wide left. So
yeah.
And then my point was my encouraging factor was Will Helt had a good game as we expected him to. He had 7 total tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, 2 of which were sacks. Which the 7 tackles was leading the team. Yeah, I liked what I saw. I mean, I'd like to see more, obviously, again, because it was against Indiana State. But I for the first game and the movement we've had on defense this offseason, I was encouraged by what I saw.
Yeah. I mean, Hell was just utterly dominant at times. I mean, his I think it might have been his first sack. His first sack, he just destroyed the quarterback. I mean, basically unblocked. He basically just shedded the guy's outstretched arm. So basically a straight run to the quarterback. But still, I mean, he like had 2 sacks, another I think 3 tackles for loss. Just he was utterly disruptive. He was everything the coaching staff has made him out to be in the first couple of weeks of camp and things like that. He looks the type too. He's tall, he's big. I know compared to last year, he's a little more lanky. He put on weight. He's very muscular. I mean, I think he's like a prototypical like defensive end at this point, and he looked great. So
Purdue's known as the den for defensive ends. I think it's one thing that they're called. So that's encouraging to see another guy on the end going out.
Yeah, and I mean, you also touched on this a little bit too, but a full game shutout, like in the current college climate in this day and age, I'm like a shutout is a big deal because all it takes is one big pass and there's a score, or a big pass and then you're kicking a field goal, and I mean there's so much scores are higher than they used to be. I mean. So a full game shutout, I don't care who it's against. I don't care if it's ISU, whatever. It's a big deal too. So I mean, there's grains of salt to take, but a full game shutout is just remarkable. So I know you touched on that a little bit, and I just wanted to give the full defense its flowers for putting together a full game shutout.
And the one thing we keep saying about it being ISU, that's part of the reason teams like Purdue play teams like ISU to get confidence in the guys, to blow them out, to just get them confident for the next game. So they're not just blown off their seats and unready for what's coming. They're confident that they can do something, and hopefully they can do just that.
Yeah.
My second point is, as a team, 11 tackles for a loss, which was encouraging. I mean, I don't feel like there was a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback, but anytime he pitched it or handed it off, Purdue guys were all over it. Right there, the second the ball left the quarterback's hands. And I just felt like that we were in the backfield a lot. And hopefully that builds confidence for our defensive line and linebackers, and we can just keep it going against Notre Dame.
Yeah. And I mean, some of that is like, let's see, I'm doing some quick math, but I guess not a ton of it. Two of those tackles for losses were by cornerback/safety. So I mean, those are guys that are like shadowing their guys, getting downhill fast, or it could have been a running back that was running wide, things like that. I mean, it was just a good tackles for loss all around. I mean, it was heavily dominated by the line as you'd expect, things like that. So,
and I don't have this point down, but it is one thing that's encouraging to me is Thieneman only had 2 tackles, which is good because that means he didn't have to clean up a lot in the back side. He did come in from his 20 yards and get some tackles right by the line or shortly after the line to stop guys. But I mean, he really wasn't a huge part of the game except for his returns on kickoffs. But
yeah,
or punts.
that was one of my big points, and I'll kind of mesh that into one of my other points as well. one of my points was only 2 tackles for Dylan Thieneman, and I
I
mean
didn't even see
that's
that on yours. Sorry.
no worries,
Give that
no
away.
worries. But and my thoughts on this is it seems counterintuitive that one of my points is only 2 tackles for arguably our best defensive player, but Dylan Thieneman only having 2 tackles is great. For a guy who led the team in tackles last year, 2 tackles is a good sign because it means other guys are getting stops before it gets to him, or or no not like blowing coverages, and he has to clean up and things like that. Like, I mean, it's because things are being stopped before it gets to him, so that's encouraging. So, and that's kind of I'll kind of mash that in with one of my other points is that the D-backs remained fairly untested, which I think is, I mean, it's maybe a double-edged sword a little bit because you want them to be tested and proven, things like that. But there's only 5 completions by the Indiana State quarterback and on 10 attempts. So 10 total attempts is not much to go off of. I mean, they didn't pass Adam. I mean, a lot of their game plan was running. So the majority of their game plan, I think, let's see how many rushes they had real quick. I mean, they had 43 carries versus 10 passing attempts. So, I mean, the defensive backs arguably had an easy game, but it's like on their attempts, they only allowed 50%, and they're on guys. There were some deflections, things like that. So, I mean, it's a good thing when D-backs are untested. And they also, the other thing too, is they got downhill on there, did a great job stopping the run when they did happen to get past the line or linebackers or whatever. No big plays for the most part, things like that. So not noticing the defensive backs is generally a good thing because it generally means they're doing their job. So
Yeah. 43 rushing attempts for 104 yards, just under 2.5 yards per carry. That's pretty encouraging. And like, I didn't have that written down either, but that's just something I just thought of. And
yeah,
I just lost my stats. And then let's see, what else did I have? On defense, we held them to only 11 first downs, which is encouraging, and they were 1 for 12 on third down conversions. Yeah, we held when we need to, and quite a few of them were short. I feel like they were pretty short yardage. Like, it was something that most teams were going to think, oh, we can pick this up, and Purdue was able to hold strong and keep them from getting the first. So
yeah, a couple. I think a couple, maybe 3, 4 in short yardage situations. But I mean, part of that is too is that 1 for 12. A big part of that stat is that they were behind the sticks a lot.
yes.
So they had third and long a lot. So I mean, if they're in third and long, it makes it really hard to convert, and then you get the ball back to your offense quickly. So can't complain about that. That's a 1 for 12 on third down and only for 11 first downs that's great. That's huge. So my final defensive specific point I have is 3 total sacks. Kydron Jenkins changing the linebacker and Scorton transferring. I think that was one big question we had, where it's like those were 2 sack leaders. They were nearly identical in their stats during the Big Ten or conference part of the season, things like that. So I'm like, that was like our 2-headed monster last year, and it's different. One's a linebacker now, and one transfers. So it's like, how do you replace that productivity? Funny enough, Kydron Jenkins still had 1 sack. I saw this coming. I mean, yes, it's first game, but I think it's going to be a trend that he's going to have several sacks still from the linebacker position. He just knows blitzing, whatever. I think he's a guy who's going to be productive from the sack totals to some manner this year as well.
And I mean, the reason he got switched to linebacker is Walters felt like at the next level, that's where he's going to thrive. So Walter being a defensive minded guy, he made the call to them, switched him to linebacker, and because that's where he sees him playing probably most at the next level. And
Yeah, certainly body type and his talent and things like that. They mentioned in the broadcast several times that he could be a middle linebacker in the NFL. So, and then I mean, obviously, Will had the other two sacks. So one of them was huge, and the other one I think was kind of a several guys were in there, and Will ended up coming away with it. The other thing with the sacks too is yes, we only had 3 sacks, but there was a lot more disruption on the line throughout the game. There's pressure at times, hurries, things like that. All good signs that lead to potential sacks, I would say. So yeah, just like a lot of my points overlap a little bit. D line and sacks and D-backs and um, Thieneman needing to do less, things like that. But I think they kind of coincide a little bit, but they're all so important. And I think I was encouraged by the pressure we did have and the total run stop. So
and then my final point for the defense is most players only played 2.5 quarters. So most of the first team played 2.5 quarters. So it was encouraging seeing the second team even out there stopping ISU's first team and just
yeah, with a young and experienced team, where a lot of these guys are seeing the field for the first time this year, whether through transfer, they've worked their way up, whatever. I think it's good always to get those reps. So, especially, I mean, part of this is that our D back room is so deep. It's going to be good to get some of those other guys out there early because, I mean, they're realistically, you got to think that the defense has to be deep. They're going to be rotated in, long drives. D line needs to be able to switch in and out. There's not a most. I mean, there are guys that could play every snap, but generally, people are going to need to get a breather here and there. So that depth and reps is great. So I mean, I think we've generally covered. I mean, offense, defense, like all the good side of things. I think it is important to also look at this game critically to some extent and see maybe some improvements we can have. We didn't want to harp on it too much because I mean it was a great game all around, offense, defense, but I think. I mean, no team's perfect, and I think there are certain things, and that I think we do need to work on. And so I think we each wrote 3 concerns, and then we'll get into those and kind of what things that we need to improve on. I think and maybe I mean they didn't matter as much in game 1 against FCS Indiana State, but you need to trim up on these a little bit before playing a team like Notre Dame. So.
And in the interview with Walters, they were asking him about what he saw in the tapes and stuff, and he said nothing that I didn't see in the game that I didn't think. Like everything that I saw we needed to fix on tape, the stuff that I saw just right away in the game, and that's encouraging. That I mean, it's encouraging that there's not a lot of extra stuff that he saw on tape that wasn't noticeable on the field. I mean, there's stuff that's obvious on the field that needs to be fixed, but I mean, no team's perfect, and yeah, it's gonna. So yeah, for my overall concerns for the game is allowing 2 sacks, and only getting 3 from the defense. The ISU QB had, I feel like, time to throw when he threw it. But like I said, when he was handing off, I feel like there was always a guy right there the second the ball hit the running back's hand or whatever. And then Alex also added this note to my point here is on the sacks, like one of the sacks Card took, Reggie Love was wide open on the left side, and Card just never could progressed all the way to him. It was in the red zone. It would have most likely been a touchdown if he was able to find him. And I mean, just stuff we got to work on, and they'll get there. So
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly, I mean, obviously don't want Carr to take extra unnecessary hits. And I think some of that was there's times where our line did, a guy broke through, and it's like those guys are getting to the quarterback. So I guess it does maybe help a little bit that like maybe that one wasn't strictly on the line, but I mean, yes, like even by the time he did progress to Reggie Love, the pocket had collapsed at that point, so there's no way he could have got it out. So my first concern, and I think it's there's sides to this, but penalties.
that
We
was
had
actually my second point was 11 penalties for 110 yards. It's
yeah
like we're committing that many penalties against lowly Indiana State. What are we going to do against Oregon?
yeah
What are we going to do against other Big Ten teams that are coming to Ross 8 or even our next game against Notre Dame?
yeah
That's one thing I'm glad that we got a bye week here in week 2 is hopefully seeing some of those mistakes early and just being aware of them when Notre Dame comes into town, and we can fix those right away. So
yeah. My one caveat with that is I know that several of those penalties were bogus.
yes,
I mean, just
absolutely.
to put it kindly, they're bogus. There were a couple that it was like, I mean, it's pretty bad. I think when I'm watching on TV and I listen to the commentators, and commentators are like, "We really don't see it." I
Yeah.
mean, that happened several times. There are
No,
several penalties that like I think should not have been penalties or were really weak. So I'm like, I'm not overly alarmed by the amount by itself. It stinks that I mean, so the yardage stinks on some of that. 11 for 110. That means you're averaging 10 yards per penalty. I mean, a lot of that. I mean, some of those are personal fouls. Like that one too. When we he hit the quarterback, and I guess
that
they
was
said
one of
that.
the everybody in the stadium was like, "What are you looking at?" Like that, there were guys all over him right away, anyways, and he was in the motion of throwing as he was
Yeah,
being taken down. So, the one thing I heard the guy on the radio or on TV say was, uh, maybe the fact that he drove him into the ground following the throw. Whereas if he has his arms on him as he's throwing the ball, like just throwing him into the ground instead of driving him hard into the ground. And
yeah, and that's so frustrating to me because I'm like, I don't know what you want him to do. I
yeah,
mean, that's one that
how's
I was
a
frustrated. I'm
300
like,
pound, 250-pound lineman supposed to?
yeah, I'm like, you're
Yeah,
you're asking a guy to not tackle when he's playing tackle football at that point because I mean everything else is clean. If he really did, I mean, supposedly he could say he drove into him some, but it's like, gosh, it was all in one motion. It wasn't like he was excessive or anything. He was just making a tackle on the quarterback and happened to land on him pretty heavily, I would say. And I mean, obviously that's several of those calls are frustrating. And I guess my concerns with the penalties are, I mean, I know some of them I don't think should have been penalties, and there were some that are like, maybe some
yeah,
first
for
game
sure.
jitters and things like that. And we need to get those out of the way. We need the coaching staff to look at those. And my big thing concern with the penalties is that it doesn't affect us against Indiana State, and we proved that a couple times because there were a couple big penalties, and we had big offensive plays right after where it's like we made up the yardage or we got the first down, but then another penalty took it back. I mean, the big deal is that penalties are drive killers against better teams. A team like Notre Dame, if you award them a free 10 yards back, I mean, they're going to take advantage of that. It's
Absolutely.
not going to be as easy to get. I mean, you're not going to get as many 20-yard passes on Notre Dame, I
110
would
free
say.
yards.
So
That's a touchdown. If you start at the 1 yard line, I mean that's
yeah,
penalties for 110 yards. You're putting them in the end zone by just your
mhm,
penalties. That's
yeah,
yeah.
and I just think we need to clean that up a little bit. I'm not overly worried, but there were a couple where it was like, okay, like offense offsides or things like that. Like we have to get a wrap on those. heading into a big season with lots of top 10 teams on the schedule. Like, we can't be giving 3 yards away.
And then my final point was concerning is, at least I find it concerning, that there were no forced turnovers. I was expecting to see more turnovers, at least by them, because we had a fumble early. And I don't think it, I mean, first game, yeah. But I just don't think it's a great look necessarily to have more turnovers than a team like Indiana State that you're playing. It just, I don't know. I don't know why. That's something that just kind of stuck out to me in the game. Like, I was expecting at least a pick or a fumble or something, but nothing ever happened. And
yeah, I mean, look, they did have one fumble that they recovered, so
yeah.
obviously you'd hope to convert that. I mean, I guess maybe one thing is that they did run the ball 43 times, I think we said earlier. Like, maybe it could be a little alarming that you didn't jar the ball at least a little loose, like once, twice, maybe. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, also,
I think if they continue to get in the backfield as quick as they did that game, it will happen, because, like I said, a lot of the handoffs, I felt like a lot of the handoffs, the defense was right there the second the running back got the ball from the quarterback, and they took him down. So
I think one thing too that's interesting with fumbles, though, is that Indiana State's coached by, perhaps an old school coach, and I feel like one of those big things that old school coaches probably harp on a lot is like taking care of the ball. So I'm like partially not surprised. I mean, I forget the coach's first name, but it's Mallory, and his dad coached at IU, I think, for a couple years, things like that. Like, that's a coach that I'm sure was really harping on those guys, like 2 hands on the ball, holding on, things like that. So, I mean, I did in our pregame, or I guess our preseason show and predictions and things like that. I think I did mention that I was hoping and thought that we would have at least one turnover, and we didn't. And I'm not overly alarmed right out the gate. I think part of that also goes into the fact that they only threw the ball 10 times. So I'm like, it's kind of hard to pick off a guy when your chances are slim. And I mean,
when you're only getting 10 chances to do it, and that's less because, obviously he's not passing the same spot every time. And
yeah. So, I mean, I'm not overly alarmed, but certainly, turnovers are game changers. And I think going through the season, we can't like every game not get a turnover, So I do think that Indiana State's game plan would perhaps benefited them and kind of avoided turnovers to an extent. They were pretty safe generally. Handoffs and things like that. But I think we'll see that increase more as we play teams that are going to throw deeper balls and test coverage more. And it's like I think we're going to see an uptick in that. So
I think that time of possession actually was on their side. I think they had maybe, or it was really close. I know
that. They had 30, 29, and we had 29, 31, which running the ball 40 times.
1 more minute.
Yeah,
just under 1 more minute. But running 43 times, but still, it's like scoring 49 points in 29 minutes. And
it's just, I'm not super surprised. We were more explosive. We scored quick. We had big plays. They ran the ball. They ran a lot of clock because they ran the ball and were not productive and didn't. I think it. I'm not alarmed by that quite out the gate, but yeah, I guess so. I do have 2 more concerns. I'll start with one. I think blown coverages is one that was a killer for us last year. How many big plays resulted in a blown coverage or a DB getting beat and things like that. And um, I would say a couple of things. The shutout remained intact due to, I think, some ISU errors at times, overthrows, drops by wideouts, things like that. So like, yes, we did shut them out. I think there was some fortune in regards to the fact that they didn't help themselves at times. So this is one thing that I think it's going to be, we need to really keep an eye on throughout the season. Avoid the big play, not losing our guys, things like that. We did see that at times this game, even though we didn't get scored on. I mean, a good team like Notre Dame, though, if you leave a guy wide open, I mean, more times than not, he's going to score. So we got a little lucky this game, but I'd like to keep an eye on that throughout the season. And then my last concern, I mean, this one also falls on the defense. And overall, I think the defense had a great game, but arguably the one productive thing that ISU did was a scrambling quarterback or a running quarterback at times. Some of it was intentional, but some of that was scrambling, and that's another thing we struggled with last year. I think to the Syracuse game, Syracuse killed us with a running quarterback on broken plays. He ran for first downs. Got big yardage on gains. I think he even scored at least one touchdown, if I remember right. I mean, that was kind of a common theme last year, is that we struggled against running quarterbacks. And this game, I think the quarterback wasn't horrible, but I mean, he ran the ball 9 times for 47 yards, and his biggest run being a 20-yard gain. And I mean, I think that's something that
Big Ten quarterback that's gonna, hurt a lot more.
Oh yeah, I mean, and he's not. I wouldn't even necessarily say this quarterback was the most mobile. And I mean, we still gave up almost 50 yards to the quarterback, which I think that's maybe arguably that and blown coverage, I would argue, are two of the bigger concerns I have from game one, and that I think we need to clean up before we get later in the season. I mean, I guess part of this was, and my question with this is, how does Purdue respond to this year? Because I think last year, I don't think we responded well. I think we struggled with this several games, whether it was J.J. McCarthy later in the season and other quarterbacks like that. I think we just allowed running quarterbacks to save them from bad situations and third downs or not third down conversions and things like that. So, that was maybe one of the bigger things. I don't know how we're going to go about fixing that. I'm sure the coaching staff has a plan. I'd hope. I don't know if we dedicate a spy or how we're going to address that, but I hate to look forward later in the season and 6 games in, we're still allowing lots of long runs for quarterbacks.
And one thing I remembered seeing in the game thread on Diehards was something that the Diehards creator Craig Bowers said in the thread was, he said, "I'm not going to lie, still a little worried about the pass protection." And I mean, at times it looked really good. But there are times where it felt like, he only had to escape the pocket 3 times. But what I said, there was 3 sacks against him.
2 sacks and then the 3 scrambles. So I mean,
it's just that's one thing I wanted to add was I remembered Craig saying that in the game thread was him still being a little worried about the protection of the quarterback. And I mean, against bigger teams, better players in the Big Ten, we're going to be seeing a lot more pressure on the quarterback. So that also goes to one of the things that I was happy to see on the offense was the 1-2 drops, steps back, throws it out to a wide receiver. The big receivers help block downfield, and we're able to control the game that way. So, I mean, that's my only other point that I can think of at the moment.
Yeah. So we're approaching an hour. We're at 55 minutes.
Oh,
I,
I didn't realize this, but one more thing I want to add that I see on the Diehards game thread is I guess Tyler Trent's brother got into the game.
yeah, I'm pretty sure he's an O lineman, right?
I don't remember, but it just says Brad Prather on Die Hard said, "Love seeing Tyler Trent's brother getting in some playing time. Great win, clean up the penalties, and we'll be okay."
Yeah. So yeah, we covered a lot. I think in just under an hour. I think generally we hit a lot of great points, offense, defense, and a couple concerns. I think maybe we should end on maybe a happier note. I know we ended on the concern, so maybe we should touch back a little bit on. It was just a great start of the season. It looked like the stadium was rocking. As far as I can tell from a TV broadcast, the stadium looked great. Fans got out. It was loud. It's always fun. My wife and I giggle when, like, on the third downs, you can always see the train horn in the background. I'm glad that football season's back, and I couldn't think of a better way to start this season for Purdue than blowout victory. Um,
And
we
what was your prediction on the score?
oh,
You
I'm gonna
remember
have
what that
to.
was? I unfortunately was off a little bit, but I was I had to go to the restroom because I unfortunately drank a little more adult beverages than I should have at the game. So I got up right at the end of the game and went to the restroom. And at that point, it was 42-0. And then I hear as we're leaving the stadium, it was 49-0. 42-0 would have been a lot closer to my prediction, but I'm glad we did score again. And
My final score prediction was a 45-7 victory. So
we,
I was off by
okay, I did better than
11
you. All
points
right.
total.
All right. I did better than you there.
Yeah.
And then next week, what day did I say we were going to try to do next week? Thursday, maybe? I don't know.
We'll update in the Facebook, but next week we're gonna have our pregame show for Notre Dame. I can't remember. It's either gonna be Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I can't remember which one we
I need
decide.
to try to find either find the game against Texas. Who was it? Texas Tech they played?
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M. So I need to try to find that game and watch that game and just see like what they did.
Yeah.
They beat them, didn't they?
Notre Dame won.
Notre Dame won, yeah. But
yeah.
I'm just curious to see what, like, compare what I saw in person at the game and then on TV again and compare it to what I'm seeing Notre Dame. I'm just,
yeah.
See if I can find that on Peacock or something.
I remember watching some of it live, and I thought Notre Dame looked pretty good. I think Texas A&M's a good team, and I can't remember the AP poll came out today. I think Notre Dame might have went up a couple spots, but it's hard to tell. Texas A&M's a good team. That's an SEC school that is generally pretty good in football, but and Notre Dame handled business, and I'm pretty sure it was at Texas A&M. So I'm like, I think Notre Dame. I think we do have our work cut out for us with Notre Dame, but I don't know. Maybe I'm naive for this, but I feel more confident post game one that Purdue's going to play better than expected. Than I guess perhaps maybe the experts expected. I guess they even surprised me at times. So I feel pretty encouraged that the game is at least going to be competitive. I really hope that our fans get out there and make it a rowdy environment and make things tough on Notre Dame. But yeah, I'm going to go back and see how they did, and then they're also going to play this Saturday, I think, but they play a smaller school, so we'll have 2 games worth of film perhaps to look at in regards to Notre Dame. but I don't know. I feel a little encouraged. Maybe I'm naive, but I hope that we can at least be at the very least be competitive and be close. But I mean, I think we I think we do have a chance to win if we play like we did against Indiana State. I think we at least give ourselves a chance. So
Yeah, I could. It's obviously not going to be a zero burger for them, and us almost getting to 50. But like it, if we play like we played against Indiana State, it'll be a very close game in my mind. I still think
yeah,
we're a little bit under, but if we play better, if we can clean up stuff, I could see us possibly sneaking one out.
yeah. I mean, I certainly hope so. And I'm looking at my
I hope so
previous
too,
score
but I'm
prediction.
gonna stick next to my. Yeah, we'll talk about that next weekend. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I guess closing things on Indiana State, Purdue dominated offense,
yeah.
defense. I think there's some small concerns here and there, but I think generally, I don't. I mean, I was very impressed game one, and I think Walters has the guys ready. I thought the offense looked crisp. I thought the defense. I mean, obviously stopping the run like we did. It was just an all around, just dominant game. I know the competition's not great, but it's good to put these teams away instead of letting them stick around. So those are my final thoughts.
Sorry, I'm just messing with things right now. I like it. You big, me small. I don't like that one. All right. All right. Sorry. All right. Well, we will let you guys go, and we'll make some posts about our next show coming up next week against Notre Dame, and we'll figure out some things to talk about. And until then, thank you for boilering up with Hammer Down Huddle. That's my new thing that I'm saying. I like it. All right,
Sounds
guys.
good.
Later. And stream. There we go.